Alright, hey everyone out there in Banjo land. Mike Heading here. Today I've got another little mini banjo lesson for you. Today we're going to be talking about a movable chord shape. Some people call it shape 1, some people call it the F position. But we're going to talk about this shape. I'm going to show you a bunch of vamping, a bunch of backup, and how to start making up some licks and some common kind of bluegrass licks that work out of this chord shape. So I'm going to give you a whole bunch of stuff you can use in your backup, your lead playing, and hopefully to move around to play in different keys. Alright, I'm going to break it all down, and if you like what you're hearing, you can subscribe at the end and you'll get a free tab sent to you. Alright, here we go. Alright, so first let's look at our chord shape we're going to need for this lesson. So we're going to start with our third finger, our ring finger, down at the 5th fret of the 4th string. We're going to take our second finger and put it on the 4th fret of the 3rd string. We're going to take our first finger and put it on the 3rd fret of the 2nd string, and our pinky way up on the 5th fret of the 1st string. So it might feel like a little bit of a stretch at first. I know I did when I first started, but I think with a little bit of practice you'll be able to get this one. So this is a G chord. It's our movable G chord. Some people refer to this as the F shape. I think because the F chord is at the 3rd fret, and that's the lowest one you can do, so I think that's why some people call it the F shape, or F position. I've also heard it called shape 1. You'll hear different names for it, but it's a movable shape, so basically wherever you put that shape on the neck, you can make that chord as long as you're using these same fingers, and that's why it's really important to use the same fingers every time. So let's start in G. And the way I always remember the G is it's at your 5th fret, your 5th string peg right here. That's where you put your 3rd finger and your pinky. So let's just start with some basic vamping, because that's a really good thing to be able to do out of these chord shapes is vamp. So what I'm doing there is I'm hitting the 4th string up with my thumb, and then I'm going up to the top 3 strings, 3, 2, and 1, and I'm pinching them all at the same time. So I'm going thumb, and then I'm pinching all 3 fingers. And then I'm going back and doing that over and over again. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So you get 4 beats if you do that. The other little secret with that is you don't want to let the notes completely ring out. Here I'm letting them ring out there. You actually want to let the pressure off with your left hand. And from the video, it might look like I'm squeezing down, but what I'm actually doing is letting off the pressure. Listen. See how I'm actually letting up my fingers to let those notes cut off. You know, the extreme example would be not pushing down at all. And you kind of want a happy medium in between the two, because if you let them ring out too much, especially on a fast song, it gets kind of muddy. It's a little bit too much sound. So you want to cut those notes off quick. That's another one you can do is you can throw in your index finger. There's a lot of modifications on that once you kind of get the basic pattern. What I would do is just practice counting to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Just see what you can come up with. Some of those are kind of based on guitar little riffs. Kind of reminds me of Merle Travis style thumb picking, that kind of thing. But those licks are used a lot. Those are great vamping, licks that you can use when you don't want to use a full roll, but you still want to be able to keep a little bit of a beat. I use that a lot when I'm singing and playing the banjo, or wanting to drop out a little bit, but like I said, still keep the rhythm a little bit. It also works really good if you get a mandolin player that's taking a solo. You can kind of drop in and do the chop part that they would normally be doing. So first let's take that and just quickly go through the G, C, and the D. So you got your G at the 5th fret, you got your C at the 10th fret, and you've got your D at the 12th fret. And I'm always cueing off of these 2 fingers because that's my root note. So these are G 5th fret, C at the 10th fret, and D at the 12th fret. And you can go up to a high G at the 17th fret if you want to. So let's just kind of vamp through those chords. Let's go to C, maybe to D, back to G, G, C, maybe back to G. Any way you can mix them up would be good. So eventually you might want to incorporate some other shapes in there so you're not jumping around the neck so much, but for when you're just starting out and if you need something to start with, that works pretty good. So that's kind of your basic vamp. And eventually you can, add some more syncopation and stuff, but I would start with something simple and kind of have something you feel really comfortable. For me, it's the thumb and then the pinch. That's kind of my safety net I go back to if I feel like I'm getting off the beat at all. I go back to that one. Okay? So let's analyze this chord a little bit more and let's talk about some licks that we can use with it, okay? So first thing we got to do is figure out what fingers to use where. So our third finger is going to take over the 5th frets on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th strings. And you're going to leave your pinky where it is. So get kind of comfortable moving your 3rd finger back and forth between those different notes. Just on the 5th fret of any of the strings besides the 1st string. And your 2nd finger is going to take over in this case, the 4th fret. So it doesn't sound very musical on its own, but we'll put it together in a second. And your 1st finger in this case is going to take over the 3rd fret on any of the strings. So same with your 2nd finger, you can go all the way up. Like your 1st finger. You're just gonna have to take your pinky off when you go to those notes, and I'll show you how to do that. Okay? So that's the first thing that you need to do is using the right fingers is really important because that'll help you when you move the shape. You can access those same licks that you practice down here. If you do them with different fingers every time, when you go up to do it somewhere else, it's going to feel like a totally different lick. So really important is use the same fingerings, okay? So let me show you one of the most popular licks. Sometimes it's called the 6 White Horses lick. I think that's a song that it was used in. I'm not really sure why it's called that, but here's the lick. One more time. There's a whole bunch of variations on that, but the basic lick is you're going to hit your thumb on the 4th string, then you're going to hit the 1st string. So you did 5th fret and 5th fret, and then you're going to reach your thumb down to the 3rd string, and you're going to play a 3 with your 1st finger of your left hand, and then a 4 with your 2nd finger. This is where using the right fingers is really important. And with my right hand, I'm going to do thumb and index, and I'm using the same string. So, if that feels new to you, get your thumb out in front, and then we'll do those 4 notes. And then we're going to go up to the 2nd string, and I'm going to do a 3, so with my 1st finger, and then a 5 with my 3rd finger, 5th fret. And I'm doing that same picking pattern with my right hand, thumb and index. And then I'm going to go back to those notes on the 3rd string, 3, 4. So here's the lick, slow down. Landing on the 4th string to end it. So it's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. So you can loop that over and over again. And practice just the right hand if it's giving you trouble. So I'm just doing it without the left hand there. There's a whole bunch of variations on that lick. You can do a pause at the beginning, or you can do hammer-ons, something like that. There's a whole bunch of ideas on that lick, or you can make up your own. I would try some of the basic ones, but what I would encourage you is count to 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. And just see what you can come up with. You know, doing that one traditional lick is good, but it's probably better practice to think of it as a position and then come up with some of your own ideas in case you forget what that exact lick is in the jam session or when you're on stage or wherever, and you can still come up with something. So again, you can play that through the chords. You know, something like that. I'm using the same fingers every time, so it feels like the same lick. Both right hand and left hand. I'm using the exact same fingers wherever I move that around. Even if I'm way up, you know, even if I'm way up here, that helps the lick, you know, maintain its consistency, so you're not having to relearn it every time. Okay, so let me show you some other ideas out of that same kind of shape. And remember, we're going to use our different fingers that we talked about. So we're using our third finger for all the fifth frets, except for the top one. We're using our second finger for all the fourth frets, and our first finger for all the third frets. And again, it's a shape, so you might have to, when you move it around, the frets are going to be different, but remember those fingerings, it'll be the same. So here's some other ones you can do. You can bend this third fret up, you can get some cool bluesy sounds. So I'm bending that note up, then I'm hitting the first string, then I'm bending it back down, and then I'm hitting the third fret, and then fifth fret on the low string. So there's a whole bunch of little ideas that once you kind of get that, you can bend that note. So I'm just kind of experimenting and seeing what I can come up with. You know, remembering one lick is as important as coming up with a position that you can come up with some of your own licks on the fly. Another little cool thing you can do is you can take your pinky off on the first string and put your first finger up there. Something like that. Another little cool thing you can do is if you can bar the first and second strings. So I'm using my pinky and third finger up at the fifth frets, and I'm pinching my index and middle fingers. And then I'm barring the third frets at the first and second strings and pinching those same two fingers. You can just go back and forth. You can actually move down to the third and second strings and keep those same fingers. Something like that. Those are kind of like old guitar licks and stuff. But there's a bunch of, listen to some old Jimmy Martin records, there's a lot of stuff, you know, in 3/4 and 4/4 they'll do stuff like that, you know. Something like that. You can also slide into those third frets if you want to go really bluesy. Or you can bring your thumb up there if you want to do a Don Reno, you know, kind of style thing. That sounds really cool and that kind of stuff. And again, remember, move these around, so don't just try them in just G. You know, try it in F. You know, the more you can move it around and think of it as a position rather than just a lick, it's gonna really help you out. Another thing you can do is you can grab the low strings on the fourth string. You know, I'm just doing 3s and 5s there. And I'm using my index or thumb and index finger of my right hand, excuse me. You know, that's kind of almost a Don Reno kind of single string thing, but you could do some different licks out of that. Or bend that note up like I was talking about. Another cool one is you can bend the third string up and then hit the third fret of the first string and then bend it back down. I really like those kind of old bluesy bends, and so I always gravitate toward that stuff. It's another cool one. Classic Jimmy Martin one that you hear in Oceans of Diamonds is he goes, you know, so he does it down here. They're in F in that song, so he goes. good down here, but you can do it. But if you go up to your high G, you're bending the third string up. It's at the 17th fret way up there. And then you've got your first finger down at the 15th fret. So again, I'm using that same position. I'm bending that third string up, and then hitting the second string with my index finger of my right hand. So I'm going. You bend it three times, and then you bend it back down, and then you hit the 15th fret of the third string, and then down to the 17th fret on the fourth string. It's kind of a cool little ending. You can do it down here too, but it doesn't sound quite as cool. So that's it. I mean, that's stuff like that's used all the time. A lot of these are really bluesy stuff, but you could also throw that 6 White Horses, thing. Another good thing to do about that one is do it in 3/4 too. So you go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 1, 2, and 3, and 1. Try and some of these licks. What's really good practice is make a 4/4 version and then see if you can modify it to fit a 3/4 version. So when you're playing waltz time, you can use some of these same backup ideas, and you might have to modify them just a little bit. But that's where you're counting, and really practice your counting and count it out loud, just like I'm doing. And if you get off, just try and pick it back up and figure it out, or take a note out here or there. If you count it though, you'll really know what you're aiming at, and even if you don't hit it right away, at least okay, I had too many notes, or I had not enough notes. And if you don't count it, you're kind of just shooting in the dark, and it's hard to know where you're at. Another cool little lick you can do is you can bar the 3rd fret on the first 2 strings, and you're going to bend this note, the 3rd string 5th fret up, and then you're going to kind of actually roll. So I'm doing a forward roll, 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1. It kind of sounds cool. Something like that. Think of these as positions. I'm using the same fingers every time, no matter where I move them up. Even if I'm in D. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll throw a vamp in, and then I'll try and do a lick. C. Then you're kind of practicing vamping and doing licks. That's another little cool one. You can bar the 1st and 2nd strings at the 3rd fret, and you're going to do a pull off with your pinky. So I'm doing a pull off 5 to 3 on the 1st string. So you really got to pull back towards your palm, really pull it. And then I'm hitting the 2nd string, so. And then you go back to the 1st string. So you go pull off, 2nd string, 1st string, 2nd string, down to the 5th fret, 3rd fret on the 3rd string, and then down to the low G. As long as you end on the low G or the high G, your lick's going to sound complete. So also focus on landing on the correct note at the end. If you resolve to the right note, it's going to make your lick sound a lot better, even if you haven't perfected the exact lick yet. If I land on the wrong note, it doesn't sound complete until I land on that last, G and resolve to the root note. So one more time. Another good one is you can bring your 3rd finger up to the 2nd string at the 5th fret, and you can pinch those two, so 2nd and 1st string, and then take your 3rd finger off and keep your 1st finger down on the 2nd string. So you're kind of going back and forth, kind of a G, regular G, and then you're going to kind of a G6. So you're kind of just putting in that little stuff like that can sound really cool. Or you can hammer on. Sounds better a little higher up. And again, sometimes I move my hand up, my right hand. When I'm moving up the neck, my hands almost kind of come together. Like that can sound kind of cool. So one more time. Kind of a modification of the Two White Horses lick. You're just adding a hammer on. Or, use your same ideas you'd apply to making a solo. Use some hammer-on, some slides, some pinches. Use little things like that to spice it up. With these licks, a lot of it is really subtle variations. You might do, instead of picking it, you might do a hammer-on. It's not, a lot of times with these licks, it's not completely reinventing the wheel. It's a really subtle variation, or taking out some notes, or adding some notes. Another cool thing, cool thing you can do is mess with the timing a little bit. So leave the first note out on that Six White Horses lick. So that'd be the square way. So what if I leave the first note out so it sounds like this? 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. So you'd have to do it. Actually, you'd have to leave it out again if you're going to loop it. So it'd be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 2 and 3. Something like that, where you're actually leaving out a note that your ear expects to hear, can be really powerful. Okay? Cool. Awesome. Good job. So the last thing I'd say with these is move them around. Remember, it's a position. So try it in A, try it in B flat, C, Challenge yourself to move around. The last thing that's really cool about these movable shapes is you don't always have to even know what the chord is. Remember, our third finger and our pinky is the root. So let's say you're listening to a song on the radio, and you just move your hand around. Oh, that sounds good. You don't even have to know what it is. You can start rolling or vamping, and you say, oh, okay, you figure out later, oh, that's B, So that's the other kind of cool thing about this is you can move it around wherever you want. Or someone says, hey, we're playing in F sharp, you can move down there and at least you can do something. And again, all these licks don't use open strings, so they're pretty you can move them all around wherever you want, and you don't have to worry about sharps and flats and hitting strings that are going to sound wrong, because as long as you're using the position and the correct fingers, you should be safe. All right, good luck.